Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Marsh Minutes. On this episode, I have a good friend of mine, Danny Jones, who is a longtime professional bassist. He played for 10 years professionally, and he's recently turned into a commercial real estate agent at Colliers. And thanks for being on, man. I think there's going to be some good stuff we can talk about.
Well, I hope so. I'm assuming you brought me on for a good reason.
Well, I've known you for a long time, and I knew you before. And maybe this is different, but even before you kind of were thinking about going into the real estate game, and you'd been
Oh
playing
yeah.
bass for years and professionally, like you did some touring and some session work with Jeffrey Straker, who I had on a few episodes ago, and
Yeah, I saw that.
that's actually my connection to him. Is I met him through you because we've been buds for quite a long time.
Well, I think we first met probably during the hardcore show days at the Buffalo Lounge. So if you're a Regina native and you've been around for, I don't know, 20 years at this point, 15 or so, there was a hardcore club that was on Lawrence Street, right across from the Frontenac, that kids in their 15s and 16 of age will go there and drop a lot of angst, and that's how we essentially met. I'm not sure what high school you went to, but I was going to Winston Knoll, again, another
We were
Regina
both
name
North
drop.
kids, right? We were both
Yeah,
North
we were
kids
both
there.
north of Dooney,
Yeah.
so we had the same
Um,
mentality.
well, and so you say Buffalo Lounge, but what about the Exchange? You know, we've played and did a couple of shows there too.
We did, but I don't think we actually really talked until the Buffalo Lounge. The Exchange is very much a kind of everyone in Regina type thing. If you were checking out shows in high school, Buffalo Lounge is a little bit special because
Uh,
it's a very concentrated, I guess, mid 2000s culture for high school people in the hardcore scene.
well,
I never really felt like I was a hardcore musician or whatever. We played, we shared bills, and that's how we initially met.
yeah, I remember like talking about intimately, the Buffalo Lounge had a much different situation for like what would be called a green room, right? Where it was mostly just out the back, out of a van, as well as a little bit of storage at the front, but everything was pretty wide open, so you didn't want to have your gear set up anywhere that people can access it. But no, it's crazy you bring up the Buffalo Lounge now because like I do have a lot of fond memories of that place.
Yeah,
Your
it was
hair was
fun.
way bigger too at that point.
In all directions, yeah. Up, north, south, east, and west. But the stages haven't changed much since then. There's been plenty of stages where, oh, no green room. The green room is the room. And yeah, you'd be surprised how many times you end up playing in a repurposed gym, I guess that's what it was, hey?
Yeah.
Like a culture club with a gym attached to it.
How many times were you kind of setting up or getting things ready and, they'd section off each of the bathrooms in the back, right? If it was a gym or some kind of auditorium type dealy.
Yeah. Well, the days of shared bills, it's been a long time since I've done that. Maybe for whatever reason. It's great though, because I can just leave my gear on stage. Because I remember the the kind of lineup of gear. You'd have the one dude with, your amps, your drum kit, and then you have the next set, and then the next set, and then the next set. So you have like the 15-minute changeover if you're lucky, and in the middle you're just kind of waiting to do your gig, and it was like maybe like 30, 40 minutes at the most.
Yeah.
But man, those shared bills were chaotic.
Unless you were the headliner and we played a lot of shows where there was one headliner and they would always do the sound check before everyone else and they would always have everything kind of set up in the back or at least ready to they had enough real estate in the back where they could have
Mm,
most of their stuff set up, including drums, and it wouldn't be just pulling them from the cases.
yeah. Well, it always suck if you're the one drummer who set up first and everyone else comes up to you and is like, hey man, can I borrow your kit? It's like,
Oh,
oh, uh,
yeah. Thankfully, I didn't play drums, so I never had to deal with that. But yeah, I remember there was a lot of times where you wouldn't want to share stuff with people. I know I wrecked a couple of mics.
yeah, as you tend to do. But there's even more recent memories of sharing a bill out in Kelowna with one band, and the band was like, um, fueled on some type of drug, more on the upper range. I remember the lead singer slash bass player like eating a burrito on stage, and it was like I'm not sure why they did, but they did. But the guitar player blew out his cabinet, and we're talking. I think it was an orange cabinet, so it was like a 410, I think. So pushes out a lot of volume and a decent amount of speakers for a guitar amp. Usually they're just one speaker. So he blew it out, and then he like unplugs his instrument cable and goes to put it into our gear. And I go up to him, it's like, there's no way you're doing this, because what uh, the fella Eric was using at the time was like a 110 cabinet or a combo amp, and I'm like, there's no way this thing's gonna survive. So I just told him to play direct, so just right in through the house PA. But yeah, that stuff happens even when you're way out of your teens.
I'm curious, and this is speaking of teens and how far away we are from being a teen. Like, I'm wondering how different the music scene is now, and how tough it would be for kids in high school, because that's when we started, right? To be able to
Yeah.
go and play shows and get music together. And not that I'm really in tune with what's happening with the local scene, or what kind of music kids are setting up concerts for or anything. But I'm just, is it still there? Do you know about that? Because I know you're in a different world now in terms of music.
Yeah, it's hard to say. There's a few good groups doing good stuff, like the School of Rock. Um, they have like their junior program, which is very focused on that. Music in the House, that's Brinkworth, Jason Brinkworth, and Ray Bell over there. They still have a lot of education focused teaching, and very personal teaching, which is great too. So there are people still putting out the work. I don't think the band programs and these kind of after school kid jam sessions are ending. The one thing that's really great about being a kid now is if you want to get your chops together and learn an instrument, you have unlimited resources. Like, I remember starting to play, like I just rented a bass. I had really no idea what I was doing. It took me years to kind of form some type of anything really, but there was no YouTube. Like, I had a book and I kind of taught myself how to read, and you know, but no one was really telling me, listen to this recording or this is how you do this. So it was a lot of years of trial and error, mostly error.
Yeah.
But kids nowadays, like, they have access to so much, and maybe that's also the drag too. It's like there's so much you can learn, maybe get bogged down in it.
I think the opportunity that kids get, especially with the various options of ways to produce music, right? Not even just doing
Mhm.
something that's directly instrument influenced, but all these different programs. Like, I remember messing so much around on Rock Bands, right? Like, I
Right.
spent so much time on Rock Band, and my first song I recorded and edited on the single track Windows recorder. Like, just cutting that up like it was the actual digital equivalent of like having a single line of tape that you
Yeah,
would
yeah.
splice together.
Oh yeah, the tech now is crazy.
And
Um,
accessible.
and
It's
accessible,
not
yeah.
just like how crazy it is, but it's how easy it is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I think it's a good thing.
yeah.
Ultimately, I do.
Well, if we talk about like how much knowledge you have and how immersed you were in the music industry, right, as a
Mhm.
professional and as an amateur as a kid, you're throwing out terminology that I had completely forgotten. In terms of, and you're refreshing my memory on like all this tour nomenclature. But how do you go from that to being a commercial real estate agent?
Well, it was around 2017. Kind of in the gigging world, it can be sometimes seasonal depending on what you do. Generally, summer really ramps up. It's when you get the most work because you got the outdoor festival circuit. But it's around then, and I was had really good year before, and then stuff tends to dry up in January, February, and starts picking back up. So around December of that year, I said to my wife Megan, I was like, if I don't get a lot on my plate in the next little while, I'm thinking about doing something different. I was kind of mulling the idea over about going back to school for accounting, maybe do my LSAT for law degree, something that either like has a lot of technical requirements because my I'm always thinking about problem solving. It's the same way I approach learning an instrument. I'm solving a problem, so I sound good and am hireable. That's the same way I approach a lot of things I do, and it usually turns out really well. Not always. That's a different story. Um, but then I thought, I don't really want to go back to school for 4 years. I have a degree in music. The credits, they don't really line up. So I thought real estate, I have friends, some great drummers in the city are real estate agents, like really good real estate agents, and they always talk about it. And I thought, there's that connection there. I could probably get my license, go work under them for a while and like figure out the gig, and really give it a really good go. But what ended up happening, I bought the books, I was about ready to start studying. Then Jeff Straker calls me. So the power of social media, I would think I was playing some stupid Instagram play along. My cat was in my lap. He's being an idiot as he always is. And then Jeff sends me a message, and I've known him for a long time, up to the point where I right out of high school, I played a few gigs with him and didn't really know what the hell I was doing, and I lost the gig, as you do when you're like an 18-year-old idiot. And I always thought to myself, that was going to be the one gig that I'm going to try the most to get back and prove to myself that I could do it. So I got the call. He's like, "Yeah, I'm doing a tour, new CD, 50 dates." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then the real estate book kind of went in the corner. So about 6 months after that, of doing that for a little while, realizing you spend a lot of time in the car, and also realizing I paid for this thing and it's not refundable, I was like, well, I might as well do it. I'm sitting in the car. Let's work on it. So started blasting through it. And as I progressed, the first book took me 11 months. Next one took me three, then around 4. And luckily, you have a 2-year window from the date you buy it. So I was 1 month out of not completing it before the curriculum changed and I have to reorder. So luckily, I made it happen. And then I had this license, and I was like, "Well, what the hell do I do with it?" And that may segue to another part of it is why commercial.
Mhm.
And ultimately, I I'm not a big fan of selling, and this is what I equate it to, paint and wallpaper and carpets to people. I like the big overarching problem solving of commercial. And at the time, I still thought about that too. And in fact, I flip flopped on the idea twice. So I know someone who was in commercial real estate before, and they said it was kind of sharky and kind of gave me the story. It's like, well, that's not really me. That's not really what I like to do. That's not how I play with others, because I'm like to collaborate and make stuff happen and problem solve, and you can't really do that when you have an adversary in your own office. So I was like, well, that's not for me.
Mhm.
I'll go do residential. And then about a month passed. I did a gig, and the dude who brought me into the brokerage, Paul, um, he said, you should come by the office, check it out. I think you'll like it. And I think Paul is like the shining exemplar of how to be a real estate agent. He's like even handed, fair, not pushy, not salesy.
Are you just saying
Uh,
that because you're going to get him to listen to this episode and he's going to take you out for lunch after?
I hope he takes someone for lunch regardless, but I truly do believe it. And he was like that before the days of where we are now, because the new generation coming in, I find, are very more collaborative seeking, and that's kind of the way we're getting pushed. Because at the end of the day, if we're all being sharks to each other, the client suffers, the customer suffers, right? Because then we're doing shady stuff, and that's not the job for me.
Well, it's funny how you say the new generation because, like, for whoever's not watching the video podcast, you were like the most silver fox dude ever. You got like nice salt and pepper in your hair, but you have just recently started, and it was over COVID. where you really ramped into your role. So you're not a recent, or sorry, you're not a long-standing real estate agent. You're kind of getting on later in your adulthood.
I am, and honestly, I think that's the best way to do it. I was never like the BCom or the bachelor admin of business type of guy. Um, so yeah, I did start officially in brokerage November 2019. And I was putting my time in on the phones and like trying to figure out how to do this because there is a very much sink or swim mentality. No matter how education focused or how team based it gets, ultimately, it's up to you to pick up the phone and do the gig, which is what I like because it's very much what music is like for me too. And the way you go out and find gigs is by picking up the phone,
Mhm.
being on the scene, um, and all that other stuff that they don't tell you. So when I think of playing gigs and being a pro musician and doing real estate, it's the same thing for me. For me, it's you do the gig, you do your homework, don't be a dick. That's like 50% of it right there.
Yeah.
Because so much of your job in both fields, artistic I call it white collar service. So anything that's like commission sales based, where like for higher ticket items, um, anything that's like that, half the gig is just like hanging out, being a dude, sitting in the car, being on the phone with people, getting people information, and that's it. That's the job for me. When
Mhm.
people want to do a transaction, they'll be ready. I can give them advice, I can give them the numbers, but ultimately they have to be ready. You know,
You're,
and
you're the third musician that I've had on the show, which is like a very large percentage based on how many episodes that are out so far. And it's so interesting to hear because I never did music professionally. It was just something I did as a kid, and
Mhm.
it kind of went the wayside to other endeavors. But it's so interesting to hear because you all have a very like driven, focused way of looking at your business. Because both businesses in terms of like being a real estate agent and a musician are really sink or swim, and you have to really consistently put yourself out there and get
Mhm.
yourself in front of as many people as possible. And it's just it's so interesting. Not even just with what you're telling me, but Emma Kramer, Roger, who I had on, and Jeffrey Straker, like they all have
Right.
very different ways of focusing on the marketing and the business aspects of their industry than a lot of other people you talk to who are just like, I went to school, I got a business degree, and now I'm doing this.
Well, the music business is very much a business. And it's different. I know for Emma's situation, she's doing a lot of arranging and orchestrating, and also more the video game side of things.
Mm-hmm.
So she's very tapped into that, where Jeff is very, you know, singer songwriter. So he's always establishing his brand and pushing that forward. For myself, I can consider myself like a freelance musician. So ideally, someone calls me and says, "Okay, got this gig for you. We may or may not rehearse. Here's the tunes. You show up and you play."
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's expected of me. Or I'm called for a session, and it's like, okay, uh, you should be here at this time. Here are the tunes. Maybe, maybe not. That's happened before, where you show up at a session. It's like, you don't have anything.
You just riff.
Uh, hopefully not riff. Uh, but there's lots of that, and it's the malleability of being able to do that and not sweat it. Like one of the greatest trials being a musician for me, like as a bass player, you always have to be uh, you always have to know the song. Like if you screw up, everyone knows. If someone
Mm-hmm.
else screws up, like a guitar player, they can kind of like palm mute, or they don't actually have to play the chord changes. They can kind of fake around it. Singers can make the band vamp. Keyboard players can lay out. Drummers can keep time. Bass players cannot do any of that stuff. You are the bottom of the chord, bottom of the harmony. You establish the feel, the harmony, and you influence everything else that's going over top. If you screw up, everyone knows.
Yeah.
Um, but I've had so many gigs, and it must be a guitar player thing, where they give you the set of tunes, or they don't. They tell you to show up, you do the gig, and then they start playing tunes they've played for 15 years, and they don't tell you what it is, and they just start going, and that used to scare the crap out of me. And at this point in my life, I think it's on them, because if they started
Yeah, I'd
that,
agree.
then, that's your own fault if you want to make a train wreck happen. But luckily, it usually doesn't, because it's happened so many times that I know kind of where things end up going, know what to look for, know what to listen for. So that's very much what I apply, that kind of no sweat principle to real estate.
Mhm.
I like you said, I'm a young fella in the industry. I have some great mentors, and the strength of being as part of a bigger shop like Colliers is I can lean on the people who have had the 20, 30 years experience and be able to fill that mandate. So it's the same thing too. You have your mentors on both sides of things, and you're able to get the gig done.
When I talk to kids, I've gone to different schools. I've gone to different places to discuss with high school kids or college kids in my industry, and also kind of the trials and tribulations that I went through. And it always comes down to like, well, what's the one thing you wish you could say? And I always say communication's big, because I feel like a lot of people aren't really equipped for communication. Kids are not, right? They don't know how to write an
Mhm.
email. They don't know how to shake a hand or say hi to someone. They don't know how to properly establish those relationships, right? And have that good social structure. But I think the one thing that, if I could put words into your mouth, it kind of sounds like you're saying be adaptable. I don't know how much of your work as a real estate agent, probably not as much as when you're doing musician stuff more, is about kind of flying by the seat of your pants and making things work the best you can and just being prepared to make those adjustments on the fly.
Yeah, I think it's equally weighted between jobs. Um, you never know what's going to happen. Like, you control as much as you can control, right? Like, as an agent, you do your job, you have your clients, you control the transaction, but at some point it goes to the lawyers, it goes to the banks, it goes to whatever third party, and all you can really do is just follow up and say, and this does happen a lot, where a lawyer may not look at a document till the day before, or a bank might not be able to finance something, but they don't tell you.
Hmm.
So you have to constantly be in communication. Like, not to the point where you're calling them every day, of course, but just letting people know it's like, this is happening. This is where we're at. Can I help you? The answer usually is no, you can't help us. But the idea that you're just saying, I want to help you get your part of the job done. And it's never condescending, right? It's always just like, let's work on this together to get it done. Because that way everyone wins.
Hmm.
Like, if you don't have the communication, like you said, and it just falls by the wayside, well, a different type of lawyer starts to get involved at that point. So it's not ideal.
Yeah. Well, I guess kind of going from that then, your transition seemed like it wasn't as arduous as most people would kind of think, right? Because musicians aren't the same as real estate. They could be in someone's mind so far beyond that. But it sounds like you've adapted pretty well. And because this is a marketing podcast, I always want to make sure that I touch on um, things that would be related to what you're doing, right? So how do you as the new kid set yourself up correctly in terms of like marketing and getting yourself out there for
Mm.
exposure, or what makes someone go, I want Danny Jones to broker this deal, or reach out and specifically ask for your services or your type of services?
Well, that's a great point. Because one of the things that I realized being a part of Colliers, it's a fairly large office. We do the most transactions in southern Saskatchewan. We have the most agents. So I'm often not competing with outside brokers. I'm often competing inside. So the question becomes, well, they're Colliers, I'm Colliers. Like, what's the difference? Um, so my strategy has been, find out uh, kind of who's doing what, get an idea of like the cool things that are going on in the city, or what the city's missing, and formulate a strategy of, reaching out to people, you know, decently kind of all the time, letting people know you exist, because you'd be surprised how few people have ever been contacted by a commercial realtor. Like, coming back to last year being the new kid on the block, uh, like my story of going from brokerage in 2019 November, when March hit and the COVID restrictions started happening, the office closed. So I thought, okay, cool. I guess I'll take like a week off. It was around my birthday. Good timing.
Happy birthday.
And yeah, yeah, the new Doom game was coming out. I was like,
It's
okay,
true.
this is good. Everything's okay. About a week later, since you get a salary for your first year at Colliers, that's so you don't starve. They discontinued that for all of Canada, so all the junior brokers lost that. And I was like, okay, that's not good, but could be worse. And then a week later, all the gigs stopped happening, like everything closed up. And well, that's double not good. And then I, just like most people my age in this city, we all have a condo we bought in 2011 that we can't sell. So my renter was leaving right away. So my prospect for the summer, which normally was really good, turned out to be real bad.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the make or break for me. I was like around April, and they actually laid me off too. So my license was in limbo for a bit. So it's like, well, what do I do? Besides moping around the house for a couple days. So, I took a course on supply chain management, which is the driest stuff ever. I don't recommend it. I don't even remember what I retained. But I just told my bosses, I'm like, you know what? Just activate me. Let's do 100% commission. Let's go for it.
Mhm.
So that's the other thing too in the real estate world. It's 100% commission. So you only make money if you close a deal. So that first year was a lot of time on the phone, a lot of time reaching out, and luckily I stumbled upon a type of property that wasn't really being focused on by anyone at the time. Um, there's self storage properties has kind of been my bread and butter the last year and a half. And I just noticed people were trading them when I thought everything was falling apart. Um, just be warned, my cat might
Well, it's okay.
he's up here and he might like dive bomb me
Well,
to
that's
get
okay.
down
We
from
could
the
always use
windowsill.
another guest, just a surprise guest coming in.
Okay, well he's coming down.
Oh,
Okay, I'll show him to you because he's very very handsome.
I remember you, Kitty. Yeah, he just
Okay,
wants to say hi.
I know, but I'm still in my work clothes and
Oh, that's fair.
blue pants and orange fur, not the greatest.
No, I suppose not.
So I was noticed self storage is being traded by a couple of groups in Canada. I'm like, what's the story here? And I got inquisitive, figured out what the deal was. I started calling people and started working on building connections. And honestly, a lot of it was, we're not looking in Regina, or we're not looking in Saskatchewan, or, we have our own thing. So I kind of took it the screw you guys, I'm going to do this myself mentality. And just started getting on the phone with owners and operators and kind of learned that, oh, actually, almost none of these are operated by owners in Saskatchewan. Like they're kind of owned by large acquisitions companies. But as I built up the contacts, I kept working the phones, and luckily, I've worked on two decent sized properties this year, which I brought a buyer for, and they've been a great group to me because coming back to the musician mentality of of don't be a dick, do your homework, communicate, and like do the job. That's what I've been doing for them, and they keep calling me, and they're calling me for stuff that's outside of Regina. So the other great thing about being a part of a bigger office at Colliers, I can call a colleague in any of those cities and be like, I got a really good buyer. Let's let's do some deals. And the attitude is, you do your work in the city, I'll do the work with the buyer side. We'll share it completely, which I don't think is industry standard, but that's fine. I prefer building relationships with people in each city. So when it turns around and they need something in Regina, you know, I'm there. I'm always thinking long term because I plan to be in this business for a long time.
Hmm.
It's the same with playing music too. It's as good as you are. There's always going to be someone better, and it doesn't matter how good you are if you're a dick either. Um, but it's really very much a game of outlast and outmatch. The longer you're in the industry, that people know that you can do the job, you just keep getting the better and better calls. That's all there is to it,
Well, it kind of
really.
sounds, if I could distill that down, it kind of sounds like you just, it was a make or break type of situation. You're used to that. And
Mhm.
it was another situation where you've just found a way to identify a strength and an opportunity, and you kind of took hold of it. And I think that probably catapulted you ahead a couple years in terms of exposure and experience, right?
It did. And the biggest thing from doing those couple of deals too, and this kind of boils it down to why I like commercial more than residential, is I get to affect my community in hopefully a positive way.
Hmm.
So by doing those larger deals and feeling some comfort in my situation, I'm able to help people that maybe I wouldn't be able to help before, because at some point you have to divvy up your time because unfortunately you have to pay bills.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure you're focused on the big stuff so you can do that. But by doing that, I'm able to help out people I maybe wouldn't be able to normally help out. So it's a nice balance of these high paying gigs and then the ones that pay almost nothing.
Yeah.
And you're just one example. I was working with someone about getting an office space, and I think I got paid like $100 at the end of it for a really long deal.
Hmm.
But condition removal was on Christmas, so I was doing paperwork on
Oh,
Christmas Day,
oh no.
and and there was a break in New Year's Eve, so I was on the phone on New Year's Eve with
No.
the landlord. So yeah, and if you start thinking about your dollars and cents on stuff like that, you'll drive yourself crazy.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why I wanted to focus on doing the gigs I wanted to do and do the real estate as well. Because I always said to myself, if I'm watching the clock on a gig, I need to do something different.
Well, when you told me that you were going into real estate and kind of having something a little more consistent than being a pro musician, I was excited for you. I wasn't nervous at all because I know you. I know you're a really nose to the grindstone kind of guy, and you do work hard. So it's great to see you have the success that you've had so far.
Thanks. I
Yeah.
hope it continues next year. I think as long as I keep doing what I'm doing, like the formula works,
Yeah.
right? My favorite, and the guys at the interview always tell you at any of these brokerage type jobs, it's like you're probably gonna starve for a couple years, like 4 or 5 years. And I just told them it's like that's okay. I play music for a living. I get it.
Yeah.
And that was it. Maybe
So
that's what sealed the deal. They knew I
could
could starve for a while.
it could be they knew what that was. So man, that's awesome. Well, we're getting close to here. We could probably even go and talk music for another half hour, or even more. But I gotta kind of wrap it up here, and I want to just before I go, kind of let you have the floor and tell people where to find you and any kind of cool stuff you got going on.
Sure. Yeah. So I do most of my posting about business related stuff on LinkedIn, as most people do, at Danny Jones CRE, which is commercial real estate. So it's Danny Jones CRE. I also have my Base Jones Instagram, which these days is mostly populated with cool properties that I'm looking at, gigs that I'm on, or mostly my daughter at this point.
Yeah.
So that's the new addition to the life.
And
Part of the
sorry,
reason to
that's
get in.
Base Jones with a Z on the end.
That's Base Jones with the Z.
Yeah.
So if you want to see, well, there's even cat related imagery. So cats I see on gigs, cool gigs, my daughter being cute, which is all the time.
She's adorable.
And
Yeah.
then She's a good-looking kid. I don't know.
You just got
That's
that
just a
from Megan, right?
yeah. I don't think I had anything to do with that. She has my face from like here to here, so she has. This is why I have a beard
Hopefully,
because
she doesn't have the beard. Is what you're saying?
she does not have the beard, but I
Okay.
got kind of a weak chin under here. If
Uh,
I was like 20 pounds heavier, oh, I'd be toast. I'd be toast. But this kind of makes it look like I have a jawline. And now that I said that in a recorded fashion, many people will know.
we'll cut that out. Don't worry. We're not actually going to
Disregard,
cut that out.
disregard.
No. Yeah.
So
Well,
that's how you can keep tabs on what I do. And the main thing is if you are interested in real estate, commercially speaking, I really like to focus on the investment side, the landlord representation side, and the tenant rep too. So I don't mind having a call. If you have any questions about the field, a property, what's a commercial real estate investment, I like getting on the phone with people because, again, I'm here for the long haul. So, yeah, give me a ring if you want to talk.
I'm going to put all those links down there, including a link to your profile on Colliers.
Great.
So everyone can reach out there. And but yeah, like I appreciate you as a person, man. I appreciate you as someone who came on and helped fill some air on the show and talking about some interesting stuff.
Yeah, well, hope you didn't mind me filling it with too much hot air. I
That's
tend to
okay.
do that.
I pick my guests knowing that that's going to be the case. So, but again, thank you for being on, man, and we'll talk to you soon. Check out Danny and take care.
Thank you, Shay. Have a good day.